It happens. You present your proposal to the customer, and they come back at you with an objection. Maybe it's the price is too high, or a similar sounding but potentially very different, we can't afford that. Or I'm sure you've all heard, I'd like to get a few more bids. I want to try it myself, or my Uncle Joe can do that. How about the other guy said I just needed a furnace? Or the other guy said if I just replaced my windows, that would take care of the problem. I need to talk to my wife about it, or my father-in-law. I want to talk to my brother first. I think we should wait a few months. This project sounds bigger than I expected. Maybe that other guy's right. I think I do just want new windows. Or the objection that could be just about anything. I just want to think about it. We wish we didn't have to, but we know these sorts of things are going to come up. So let's talk now about handling objections. Before I dive into that, though, better than handling objections, I want you to think about preventing them. Did you set the expectations with the homeowner? In asking questions and listening to the responses, have you been able to tease out exactly what the homeowner needs? Or do you need to ask some more questions? In the course of asking those questions, have you established your ability to deliver results, to solve their real problems, to protect their house while you do it, to keep their house clean, to show up on time? Have you made sure you've addressed their concerns and summarized the benefits, not just the benefits that you know are there, but the benefits they've identified as being important to them? And have you offered a realistic solution? Realistic in terms of both the ability to actually solve the underlying problem, realistic in terms of the customer being able to pay for it and having an interest in paying for it. In other words, have you used a strong consultative selling process before you even got to the point of presenting the proposal? In an ideal world, you want to head off as many of these potential objections by building value before you make your presentation. But objections will inevitably arise. Well, let's talk a little bit about handling them. And here's a basic framework that I'd like you to think about. First, acknowledge the objection. Then hopefully, as you've been practicing throughout the sales process, ask questions and find out the real drivers, which will in turn allow you to address the root causes behind the objection. And then reinforce the value that you've helped create and identify and move the customer back into that buying conversation. Let's tease this out a little bit more. First, acknowledge the objection. Don't look at the objection as an overwhelming source of frustration, but instead look at it as an opportunity to learn more, to better understand what the customer values, what they're willing to pay for. By all means, when a customer raises an objection, don't quickly jump on the defensive. And absolutely, you want to avoid attacking the customer and getting their defenses up. Wherever possible, if it's reasonable to do so, validate the objection that the customer has just raised. Several of our customers have asked about this. You want to get other bids? I'm glad to hear you say that. Here's why. Having acknowledged the objection, you now want to find out what the real drivers are. And don't necessarily assume it's what appears on the surface. Instead, you have to dive deeper and find out what the real underlying concern is. And how are you going to do that? Well, it should be no mystery if you've been using a consultative sales process, you're going to use questions. If you want to find out what's driving the customer, you have to get them to tell you. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Has this been an issue in the past? When they offer up additional information, now you have a chance to address the root causes. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I understand. Here's what we're going to do to make sure that isn't an issue for you. And now you can outline how you can address the real underlying concerns that they've raised. If it's about price and affordability, maybe you can phase the project in over time. If they're worried about who's going to be traipsing through their house, you can remind them of the fact that you're a one-stop shop and it's your own employees will be there. Obviously, the answers here are going to depend on what the concerns were. But you have a much better chance of addressing their concerns if you take the time to find out what those real concerns are. Having done that, you can now reinforce the value and move back into that buying conversation. First, ask more questions to confirm that you understood the issue and that your solution is going to make that concern go away. You might have to dig a little bit deeper, look for additional objections, and then by all means, ask them if they're ready to move forward. Ask them what the next step is. Best case, you get the signature right now, schedule that job and do the work. Or maybe not quite as exciting, but still a reasonable step that holds tremendous promise for you. Schedule the follow-up visit so that you can review other bids or talk to the other decision makers who couldn't be there for that first conversation. Set something concrete in place so that you and the customer both know what those expectations are. As you go through this, it's critically important to remember that there are no magic answers. There's absolutely similarities, but you're responding to the individual concerns of each individual homeowner. You're addressing their fears, and you're also building on the value that you can provide to them, the value that is particular to that homeowner. All this comes through a consultative sales process and a lot of practice. Some of that practice is going to have to be on handling objections in particular. A number that I often repeat is 50, and 50 is the minimum number of hours that each individual in your company ought to be in training every single year. Now, 50, I just said, is the minimum. I actually think a better number is 100, and certainly those on your sales side ought to be spending a couple hours a week practicing many elements of the consultative sales process, including objection handling. And how does that look? Well, we're going to run through a little exercise and an example. I recommend working on objection handling with extensive role playing. Somebody plays the homeowner, somebody plays the advisor. During the role play, you don't talk about what you would say. You use the actual words. You pretend you're in that situation right now. It's not, well, then I would tell her this. Instead, it's, oh, ma'am, thank you for sharing that. Can I explain a little bit more about our basic approach to keeping your house clean? And then at the end of the role play, you give and receive feedback. The person playing the homeowner offers up their impressions. The person who is practicing their role as the advisor will say what they were thinking and why they took a particular angle. And then everybody who's observing the role play can chime in with a good constructive question or point or suggestion. Wherever possible, looking for the positive to build on and suggesting positive things that they can do to make it even better. In just a moment, I'd like to show you an example of a role play. And this is the sort of thing that you can do in your office. In fact, I'd rather have you practicing it in your office than in the house with a live customer. In this particular example, the owner of the company, Matt, hadn't been doing a lot of role playing. That's okay. This isn't about being perfect. You're not going up for an Academy Award. What you're trying to do is put yourself in the situation. Practice listening to the homeowner. Practice using the real words. And then giving and getting the feedback so you can get even better at it. Let's take a look now at that example.